Hi there. In this video, we practice doing proofs from existential premises. So what I want you to do is pause your videos and see if you can give me a proof, an informal proof of this argument. So remember, this is an argument in English. This is not a formal proof, but an informal one. How do you reason from an existential in this space? So pause your videos now and see if you can figure that out. Okay, that was your chance to pause your videos. The thing to notice is that we have some existential information here. We know some student will get an A in logic. So to prove something about them, we need a way to talk about them. That's what this arbitrary name does, this way of talking about those things. So in English, you do the exact same thing as informal proofs. We have to have a way of referring to them. And that's what we do in red here when I say call them N, because what I first do is I repeat premise number one. We know some student is going to get an A. Let's have a way of talking about them by just using the name N to refer to whoever it is that that student is that's going to get the A. Or, of course, it's consistent with some student getting an A that many students will, and N will just pick out any one of those folks arbitrarily. So once I have the ability to talk about N, I can then use my universal information. I could not use this first because I didn't have a way of talking about that student. But once I have N, then I can know from premise two that N is going to be happy because anyone who gets an A will be happy. And I know of N that they will be getting an A. And thus, since I know it about N, I can existentially generalize and know that some student will be happy. So notice the maneuvers here in this informal proof are done in English, but they're incredibly similar to the way that we learn to do this in a formal proof. So if you understand how that informal proof works, then you should be able to give me a formal proof of the exact same sentence. So when we talk about that assumption that N is going to be an arbitrary person in the domain who has that property, like getting an A in logic, that's just like when we assume N in a formal proof has property P, if we know that E of X, P of X is the case. So assuming that N is an arbitrary name with this at N notation is just like saying, let's call them N, whoever it is that's that student that's going to get an A. So let's practice it. Let's see if you can do that formal proof, a formal proof version of what we just proved informally. So pause your videos now and see if you can write this out for me. Okay, that was your chance. Let's talk about the answer. Here's what a formal proof of this would look like. So it ends up being 7 lines. So get an A, that's my predicate that I'm using for X will get an A. So that's premise number one. And I know that every object in the domain that gets an A is going to be happy. So there's my formalization of premise number two. Now, how do I follow that existential reasoning? Well, I have to assume A, let's call them N, whoever it is that's going to get an A. That's what this is doing. A is an arbitrary name such that it's whoever is I know from line one that's getting an A. That's my assumption line of the subproof. And if I can prove some sentence down at the end of that subproof, which lacks the name N, remember, it can't have the name N in it, then I can export that with existential elim. And how do I prove that, of course? Well, I just have to use my universal premise on line 2. I instantiate it. I don't care about all objects in the domain anymore. I just care about my name N, the person who's going to get an A. So I do universal elim on line 2 to get this. Then I just do arrow elim to prove that N is happy. But the key, remember, don't forget step 6. This is one of the things to look out for. Once I know that N is happy, I have to get rid of the name N so that I have something good for exporting. So that's why I existentially generalize first. I know somebody's going to be happy, which is, of course, exactly what I was trying to prove. Since that lacks the name N, I can export it with existential elim. And of course, remember, I just cite my existential sentence, and then I have to cite another thing, the subproof, which I followed that structure with. So there is both a formal and an informal version of the same argument. Okay, thanks.